Go.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about our agenda. So we're going to just discuss really what the purpose of a community of practice is, and specifically our purpose here today. And then we're going to spend today doing an overview of the alternate diploma purpose and requirements. We This is going to be a big part of what we're talking about is discussion is a huge part of community of practice. So we're going to discuss implementation in your LEA, whether you have an alternate diploma option that you're working through or you want to, or challenges you have with that. We're going to be discussing that. And then at the end of our time, we will wrap up and ask you to give us some feedback on how we're doing and what you want to see the next time we meet. Okay,
Ready to
yeah,
go to the next
next
slide? Okay.
slide. So just in our discussion about what is a community of practice, and I don't know how many of you have been involved in a community of practice, or sometimes we refer to it as a COP. Really the purpose is that we are providing a space, and by we, I mean the Utah State Board of Education, Lavinia, Tracy, and I, for you all as educators, and we're here with a common goal, really to collaboratively learn, problem solve, share effective practices, brainstorm through things that aren't working, and then build capacity around a specific topic. So back to us, Tracy, Lavinia, and I, we will be, coming up with the agenda, providing this virtual space for these conversations. We will also be providing, obviously, some resources to engage you all in our discussion and coming up with, sort of the basic facilitation. But what a community of practice really is on your plates, right? So we need participants that are engaging in these discussions and really driving where we go with our, even within this afternoon, and where we go with our next community of practice. The idea is that you are here, and it's a safe space, but you're here to come and share on this topic, ask questions. We are a pretty casual group, Lavinia, Tracy, and I, so please feel free to raise your hand and pop in as you have questions. But most of what our agenda is going to be is like sharing some basic information and then opening it up to you guys to really lead the discussion and drive the questions. And so I want to make sure you know that if you're showing up for this, you are an active participant.
Great. Thanks for setting the
Yes.
stage for us. I think Tracy's going to talk a little bit about really the intended purpose of the alternate diploma. So Tracy, are you in a place where you can go ahead? All right.
I am. I'm sitting in an entryway here out doing some co-teaching stuff. So if it gets too loud, Lavinia, just say something and then you just might have to jump in and take over.
Okay, sounds good.
I think a group's about ready to get let out here pretty soon, so it could get loud. So the purpose of our alternate diploma, one of the main reasons why this was brought forth when ESSA was reauthorized was really to validate the academic progress of our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities within that kind of K-12 realm. So to honor that piece of it in those high school years before they move on to those post-high services. And so really that was what the intent of the alternate diploma was. It is something that doesn't end fate. So when we award this to our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, it doesn't end their fate. It's just allowing that student to then say, hey, we recognize the academic work that you have done and earned those credits up into your 12th grade year, and that when you move now on to post-high services, you can really focus on that transition piece and achieving those goals towards employment, and that higher education and independent living. So that really was the intent of the alternate diploma. It is only for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities who are receiving instructional support in our essential elements and participate in alternate assessments. So those are the group of kiddos that you can award the alternate diploma to. So with that, there was not, and Lavinia might be able to add a little bit more to this. There has not been a whole lot of guidance around the expectations or requirements for awarding an alternate diploma, which I think has made it a little bit tricky for implementing. And so Tanya threw this document in the chat. We have a small technical assistance document around alternate diploma expectation requirements and some of those course options for students. But that really is about the only thing out there that is in place to support you guys with implementing the alternate diploma. So I don't know if Lavinia, you want to jump over to that and we can walk through that document.
Yeah, I might have to, do I need to stop sharing or no? I think you guys can see this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I provided some instructions, so you'll find this document on our post-secondary transition and graduation page. It is on the guidelines tab. And if you go down, you'll see a heading called alternate diploma. And that very first document, the alternate diploma graduation requirements and course options, is the document that was put in the chat and also the one that Tracy is referring to. I do want to mention there is a frequently asked questions document as well. We won't spend time going over that today because it actually is in revision at the moment.
And there is a question, is there a difference between a certificate and a diploma? And so I don't know if that's going to be answered within what you guys are about to do.
It probably is answered in the FAQ document, but it not necessarily in this document, right? But just, just in short, yes, a certificate of completion does not have requirements at the state level. So LEAs create whatever the requirement is for a certificate of completion. Usually it's a certificate of attendance. It doesn't require certain credits in certain areas. It only says that it can be awarded to a student who has not completed a regular diploma and is in their senior year. That is the only state requirement for the certificate. So it is quite different, actually. But it does not end fate for a student on an IEP. So if they are awarded a certificate, they can come back to the LEA as long as they're eligible and they meet that, the age requirement.
And I did just put, we're not looking at this today, but for any of you that are interested, I did just put that FAQ link into the chat. So the main one we're looking at today is that top one that I put in about the alternate diploma requirements and course options.
Yes. And that FAQ document, like I said, it's mostly relevant. There are just a slight couple of changes in graduation calculations. Some things have changed with Office of Special Ed programs at the federal level, but pretty minor changes. So do you want to do a quick walkthrough of this, Tracy, just to kind of tell people how it's out?
Sure. So really the biggest components that gives us a lot of guidance around implementing an alternate diploma is that it is for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and it has to align with our regular graduation requirements. And so that was one thing that we had discovered was maybe something that was not fully understood across the field very robustly around what were those graduation requirements in order to award this. So with that alignment, USBE requires, as of right now, a minimum of 24 units of credits earned. And so that can be through various courses that are allowed for those regular graduation credits. So one of the other things that is really important to take note here is IDEA and ESSA are also very clear that just because a student is identified as having a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and they may require that instruction in the essential elements and take alternate assessments, it doesn't mean those students can't also earn a regular diploma. So if they also meet those regular graduation requirements, we are allowed to award a student a regular diploma. So the law is pretty clear within that. We also have this option for the alternate. you as an LEA, there's a little bit of guidance in this administrative rule here that's been put forth when we adopted the alternate diploma that walks you through that you as an LEA may choose to award an alternate diploma to a student with the most significant cognitive disability if they're accessing their core standards through the essential elements, if the IEP team makes graduation substitutions in the same content area from a list of alternative courses, the students meet all graduation requirements before exiting at or before age of 22. So you can also award an alternate diploma. It doesn't have to be in a student's like senior year, 12th grade year. You can do what we call move that cohort. And once a student has completed all of these requirements, you can award that diploma up until they age out at 22. So let's see. An alternate diploma is issued in accordance with subsection 1 may not indicate that the recipient is a student with a disability. And the LEA may still be obligated to provide FAPE to an eligible student after they earn that diploma. So it does not end FAPE, which is one of the big key components about an alternate diploma. Continue down, Lavinia.
Yep.
So that's where we have this space where we can provide a list of alternative courses that may be considered for students with those cognitive disabilities receiving an alternate diploma. It is also outlined that an LEA may substitute courses to the superintendent to be considered for possible inclusion and shall update the list of alternative courses required. So that's really the heart of what we have and the guidance that we have in place for alternate diploma. So one thing that we added to this document that we felt was missing to kind of help bridge that gap around, what is the required credits? So you'll notice here that in this document, we've added this space where we've now outlined it's a minimum of 24 credits to be completed to earn a regular diploma. Therefore, that would be the expectation. That students are earning 4 credits in English language arts, 3 credits in math, 3 credits in science, 3 credits in social studies. Students earn 1.5 credits in the arts, a half a credit in health education, 1.5 credits in PE, and 1 credit in CTE. They also are required to have a half credit in digital studies and a half credit in general finance literacy, and 5.5 credits in electives. So the other tricky part that comes into all of this is, so not only do we have these requirements, that really is the biggest thing that we have in guidance for alternate diploma is it has alignment to a regular diploma. But we also do know that IEP teams have the autonomy to do course substitutions and possibly graduation substitutions if need be. So that is also something that IEP teams can take into account. They are allowed to make those course substitutions and modifications if needed. So we've linked in here, there's some additional guidance documents that we have that Lavinia, her transition team has that digs a little bit deeper into that. But that really is where we're at with guidance. I don't know if you want to say any more about this, Lavinia.
No, I don't think so, but I would just say if you're not familiar with this document that Tracy just spoke about, the USBE post-secondary transition and graduation for students with disabilities guidelines, graduation guidelines, it is on our page, our webpage. So make sure that you're familiar with that so you kind of understand, how those modifications, substitutions, and accommodations work on the student's IEP. So I don't know if you want to do a quick rundown of one of these areas so we can talk about, because sometimes there's confusion about, does the student have to be signed up or registered for an essential elements class, or could they go into a regular language arts?
Well, and on
ninth
that,
grade,
too,
for
Lavinia,
example,
there's a
right?
question from Melanie.
Okay.
Do the courses have to be in the gen ed setting anymore?
Yeah, so that answers that. So no, they do not. So that's kind of what this shows in this area. So this example is English language arts, ELA, right? So a student could take essential elements 9, 10, 11, and 12, but they could take regular language arts 9, 10, 11, and 12. Obviously, probably needing significant modifications, but there's nothing that says this. So in other words, the alternate diploma is not determining a student's placement right? They can be in a pull-out type of special class, or they could absolutely be in a regular ed class, or so this example is special education course or an essential elements, but they could also be in a regular ed class.
So the EE
Yep.
classes will count for
Yep.
all 4 credits.
They sure can, but
Yes.
they're not required. They're not required.
Right.
So you can be pushing that essential elements instruction into a gen ed course, or even just a resource special ed course. So, yep. So, and IEP teams have that autonomy to make course substitutions as well. So the only like alternate courses that we have for students are where we have our essential elements. So we only have essential elements courses for ELA, math, and science. So that's something to take note, which is originally what this document was, is it only had information around the ELA, math, and science. And so there was this kind of space out there where folks thought that those were the only courses that were required in order to award an alternate diploma, which is not the case. So there still is that expectation that we hold kiddos to the same requirements in the alternate diploma and meeting those credits, right? With the caveat that there may be course substitutions and some modifications within that content. So that really ends kind of where we were and what we added to this document. We've then linked here to just some of those to the web pages that outlines all of the regular courses that meet graduation requirements, as well as Lavinia's that graduation and transition for students with disabilities guidance document as well.
And I see that Jalissa has a hand raised. Jalissa, if you want to come off mic, go ahead.
Yeah, just quick question. Did you say that a student could receive their education in the essential elements but still get a regular diploma?
Yep, they can if they meet the requirements. So ESSA, and I'm pretty sure it's in IDA too, I can go back and look. They're very clear in saying that just because a student is a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities and participates in alternate assessments, you cannot withhold a regular diploma because of that. So again, they have to meet the requirements within the regular diploma, but an IEP team could choose to award a student a regular diploma if they have met those requirements.
But even if they did the alternate assessments and they were not at grade level at all, they were at essential levels, maybe second, third grade level when they're in 12th grade, they could get a regular diploma?
If they meet graduation requirements, and even if they take alternate assessments and they met those other graduation requirements, we have essential elements for ELA, math, and science. But yes, and the law is very clear on that. An IEP team cannot withhold a regular diploma. Does it mean the same? Depending on the amount of modifications that you've done, to that coursework, it may not hold the same meaning, but the law is clear that you can't withhold a regular diploma if they meet those requirements.
But by completing an alternate diploma, they're completing the same requirements for a regular diploma. Is that not? Sorry, I'm just baffled. I'm just trying to understand.
I mean, it's a good question, right? Because you're right. I think the intent of the alternate diploma was to allow our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities to be able to leave our schools saying that they graduated with a diploma versus that certificate, right? But what Tracy is saying is that the law is open, and IEP teams do, have the ability to make modifications, accommodations, and substitutions for regular and for alternate. So that's where there's a pretty big gray area. Is that diploma really going to look the same? It may or may not. I think those are all things that we have to kind of think about and have discussions about in IEP teams in the context of a student's transition plan and their post-secondary goals, first and foremost, right? Like, are they going on to a regular college, right? Do regular colleges recognize the alternate diploma? It's still kind of new, So in terms of most colleges have their own admissions and entrance criteria, and that can involve courses and testing. So they might look more closely at those kinds of things than just what diploma the student has when they leave. So I think there's a lot of kind of moving parts here, right? But I think the law just makes it clear that we can't say that absolutely a student with a most significant cognitive disability can't possibly earn a regular diploma because they can. Yeah.
But the key is once they earn a regular diploma, FAPE comes to an end. So
Correct.
that
Yeah.
was also another, like, if you go back to kind of that slide around the purpose, like one of the purposes was to honor the coursework in which a student completes those requirements, and be able to not end FAPE and still move into those those post-high transition services. So that was one of the biggest keys. And I think kind of back to that, Jalissa, right? An alternate diploma, a regular diploma, they still are required to have the same number of credits and kind of held within that. But the difference is you can award an alternate diploma and continue FAPE.
And so I'm thinking this answers Billy Joe's question from Utah Virtual Academy, but her question was, do they have to meet those requirements before their senior year, or is this an option for super seniors too? So I think
Lavinia might be the better one to answer questions about awarding the regular diploma. Like, I think we have students that come back and can continue, and you can earn that regular diploma.
Yes, absolutely. So that's typically our retained seniors, right? That they come back for a fifth year, maybe it's a sixth, a seventh, and eighth year. If we continue to use that retained senior code and they haven't been awarded or coded with the GR, which is an exit code, that's a graduation code where a student can't come back. So the answer to that is yes, they could still be chipping away and working at that regular high school diploma through their post-high years. We don't see it a lot, but that is possible.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Do we still have any questions, or we can maybe move on to our next activity where we would love to hear from you all? Are we good on questions at the moment, Tanya?
Yes. So I just put in the chat a link that you can go and do this on your own. We would just like you to take, I can't remember how many.
Yeah, so it's 3 o'clock now. So I thought we would take about 10 to 15 minutes. We'll kind of see. There's 4 questions. You don't have to answer every one of them. Some of these may not apply. So, kind of go through them. We would love to at least have you answer the first question. Is your LEA currently implementing the alternate diploma? If you would please type your LEA name first, and then before you actually put a response in the document. And then go ahead and answer the other questions that you feel like you can speak to, right? And so let's do about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I think we'll have a discussion at the end about what's on the document. And you should have access to it. Let me know if you don't, but I see a lot of people in there, so that's a good sign. And just go ahead and type in.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's great. Thank you.
And Lavinia, there's another question in the chat, which we may have to bring back to our next one because it's a great one. Do teachers have to meet licensing requirements for highly qualified status? So it's a great question. And I think those are some of the questions and conversations that Lavinia and I have been engaging in, is we've got these courses all the way up to high school, and we have these highly qualified components. So what do we do with that and those licensing requirements and in teaching those things? So I don't know if you have an answer to that, Lavinia.
Well, so you're talking more around those gen ed courses, right? We're not talking about being licensed in terms of essential elements, right? I just want to make that clear. So we're talking about like highly qualified in math, for example, or other like science. Is that what we're asking?
Bethany says yes. So we're talking gen ed courses, correct? And I don't know if Bethany can unmute or not. She said yes, gen ed courses. Are they required for those gen ed courses?
I'll just unmute. So my question really is our resource teachers have to be highly qualified in math to be able to teach math. Do our severe teachers have to be highly qualified as well in math?
So to be listed as the teacher of record under gen ed courses, there's a certain license that is required for certain courses. So to be a teacher of record for an essential elements course, you have to hold a special education license. That is the requirement for special education courses. And that includes the essential elements, is it's a special education teacher. So you can't give them a secondary math, like a secondary math one course assignment without having that qualification. Does that make sense? But they can have an essential elements course or a special ed math course, and they meet that qualification. So that's where actually Kristen Campbell is our big course guru and really understands for the various courses that we have. What are the licenses required qualified to teach those courses? But that is a great question.
And
Thank
now,
you.
Tracy, would you know, like in a co-teaching situation? So if there was a gen ed teacher that was highly qualified in math as the teacher of record, but it was a co-teach along with a special education licensed teacher, they wouldn't also have to be highly qualified in math to co-teach. Is that correct? To your knowledge, Tracy?
Ooh, I don't know, but I am actually with my co-teaching guru, so I could find
Yeah,
out to
so I
that, like
thought.
in a co-teaching. That's a really great question. Hold on, let me see if Jenny will walk up here. She just was here.
My guess is as long as the gen ed teacher is highly qualified in math, you're probably okay there if it's
Yes.
co-teaching, but we'll verify that, yeah.
Less than so now.
More questions. Okay, so the answer to your co-taught question, Lavinia, is as long as the gen ed teacher in a co-taught classroom has that highly qualified, then they're good to go. The
Okay.
special ed
so-
teacher doesn't need that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it's great to see a lot of really helpful comments in here. I'm just trying to gauge whether people are still adding to the document or if we can kind of come together and do a little share out, wrap up. See folks still typing? I don't really.
Did we go down to 3?
Yeah, I'll go down. I
Or
did to the last one, yeah. I don't want to make anyone dizzy. I'm trying not to go too fast. So here's 4.
Oh,
A
still
couple
a little
people are
bit
still
more.
okay. So let's do another minute or so. Okay, it looks like most of the typing has slowed down. So I think we can, thank you so much again for lots of great questions and feedback on this form and your successes and your frustrations, honestly, with the alternate diploma. I think, when this first came around, and this was in 2017, where ESSA, like Tracy mentioned, was reauthorized, and states had the opportunity to implement the alternate diploma. Not all states did. I want to say there's maybe 20 out of all of our states that have implemented this. And there was also very little guidance from ESSA, I must say, right? All it said was kind of what Tracy outlined, that it must be a student that has the 1% flag, that is identified as a student with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and that it had to align with our regular diploma. So with that, we kind of did the best we could like in terms of guidance, but I hear a lot of you asking for like more clarity and more I think explanation of what is a substitution and what is allowable. And that's one of those hard hard things where we say a lot in special ed, like it depends, or it's an IEP team decision, because at the state, we're not saying you can substitute this, but not that. We do give guidance saying like, be careful to substitute core coursework, for example. So we don't want to like substitute, you know, a math class for PE or something like that, right? We want to kind of keep the integrity, I think, of the core courses and standards for sure. But there is flexibility with the other requirements. So I think that's what makes it difficult, because we can't really be super prescriptive in saying exactly what is allowed, what is not allowed, like course by course by course. And we know also LEAs have different courses than other LEAs have. So those are IEP team decisions. So we kind of provide more guardrails, I would say, than anything else. And certainly if you have a situation or a question, you can always reach out to either one of us to kind of run that by us, certainly. But I'll go ahead and start with how many LEAs are currently implementing it, that first question, and how many not. And it kind of looks like it's a bit of a mix, or maybe more yeses than no, more yeses than nos. Yep, definitely. Okay. And, you know, I think we have the range here of our larger school districts, smaller, you know, charter schools, and maybe with charter schools, you know, from year to year, you may not have a student that isn't even as qualifies for the alternate diploma, right? So that can change pretty quickly from year to year. So thanks for that feedback. I was happy to see quite a bit of successes around this, and at least, you know, lots of really good faith effort, I think, in trying to implement this and recognizing that it can be a good thing for the students. And I, you know, I think the biggest thing is before we just had that certificate of completion. And I remember back when I first came to the State Board of Education 9 years ago, and there was a stakeholder group, and it was very clear that parents were in favor of the alternate diploma. Parents were saying, you know, my student with a significant cognitive disability has spent 4 years in high school, has worked hard, has, you know, taken all of these classes, yet they can't access that regular diploma, or they didn't feel like they could, and they were just leaving with that certificate that really didn't have the rigor and the criteria. So they were very in support of the alternate diploma at that time. So I don't know what you're kind of experiencing with parents now. I think obviously parents need to learn about it if they haven't already, but those that were in those early conversations were really feeling like this was a good thing. Okay, any other, and if folks want to like expand on anything that you've written, or put something in the chat, or unmute about any of these comments in question 2 about implementation. I'm not going to probably have time to read every single one, or, you know, talk about every single one of them. But if you feel, you know, strong need to follow up, please make yourselves known by either putting it in the chat or unmuting. Okay, and I like how USDB said that they've used the FAQ document to help families, and that is a really good place to start, I think, with not just families, but also faculty, right? And students, new teachers, to kind of start with that FAQ document that might be more helpful, and then move to the course options and guidelines document. I think it puts it into context a little bit better, because it asks a lot of questions about what's the difference, and, you know, what is it? How does it impact a student? Can they come to post-high? Like, a lot of those questions are answered in that FAQ document. So I'm glad to see that being put to use. All right, should we go to question 3? Okay, struggles implementing. So yes, difficulty with lack of guidance, certainly, and that certainly some of that is on us, and, you know, some of that is also the fact that there isn't a whole lot of guidance from ESSA. So we did the best we could, but we did improve that document in hope that there's a clearer guidance on the number of credits, and in the areas of all of those credits need to be required, need to be completed. But of course, there is always the caveat that IEP teams make decisions individually for students when it comes to modifications, you know, placement decisions, right? All of that is individualized. So there isn't a lot of guidance there, because those are IEP team decisions. And again, like, if you have specific questions, please reach out.
So Heather says, well, first of all, there is, we love the transition Padlets is in the chat.
Great.
Heather says, do you have guidance to help teams and families how to determine when it's appropriate to provide a regular diploma versus the alternate diploma? for a student on the essential element standards. We don't really have that guidance that I know of.
We don't really
And
have
that's
that guidance.
IEP team.
Again, that's an IEP. I mean, you know your student best, right? So I think the most important thing is to make sure that you're having these conversations early, that we're not starting these in 11th grade, or, you know, that we're talking about this even earlier than 9th grade, right? But because that's when the transition plan comes into place at age 14, sometimes that's 8th or 9th grade, to really have, I think, open and transparent conversations with the IEP team and especially the parents, if a student is eligible for the alternate diploma, to kind of, you know, help explain the difference between the alternate diploma and a regular, and in light of that student, what is going to be rigorous and what is going to be the best fit. And then I think you pair that with what's on their transition plan. What is their you know, plan for employment or further education and training? Certainly that's going to be impactful, right? So if a student really wants to go on to a college, the alternate diploma might not be the right choice. If they're going on to a program such as Aggie's Elevated, then it really doesn't matter so much. They have different criteria around their admissions than just how a student exits, what type of diploma. That's not so much important. It really is more about the student's self-advocacy and some of their independent living skills and their social skills and those kinds of things, right? And none of that really, like a diploma doesn't dictate any of those types of skills. So I think there's like so much to consider around what is the best way a student should exit. And those are very individualized.
And Jessica Sitton says that's something we started a couple years ago, making sure to include with end of year 8th grade CCR appoints with IEP, maybe
CCR plans or plans.
So
yeah.
college and career readiness, right?
Yes.
Appointments plans,
Yeah.
those counselors.
with their
Yeah.
IEP and team counselors.
And I would say if your school counselors aren't familiar with the alternate diploma, like please share with them the FAQ documents, a good place to start, or share the course options. Because you know, we try to communicate as much as we can to our counseling specialists here to get that message out, but we understand that it doesn't always get to all school counselors. So
Yeah.
you guys can be the messenger, you know, if they're not aware.
And Heather, I
And
think
these are
back to
you-
kind of like Heather's question about regular versus alternate diploma, you know, and Olivinia's right at the end of the day, what's the end goal? And I always used to say that when I was in the classroom, you know, they're going to leave me in a short time. Like, where are parents? Where are students? What's the end goal? And, you know, if there really is a need for those post-high services, then you don't want to do a regular diploma because it does end FAPE. So I think it really, you have to take all those long-term things and kind of, you know, the trajectory they're on there into consideration when making those determinations for sure.
Yeah, and I would also say it might be a little bit more difficult to implement a lot or have a student finish out the alternate diploma in post-high. I mean, it may or may not. It just depends on if you have access to all of those core requirements and all of those courses. Oftentimes, post-high programs don't necessarily provide all of those content area courses. I mean, you may have relationships or you might be close to the high school where you can do that. But I think the intent of post-high is to get students out in the community off of, you know, high school campuses. And they're really now focusing on independent living skills and employment and all of those sort of adult, right, environments. And so I think what we wouldn't want to see is that a student is just chipping away at an alternate diploma all through post-high and doesn't get some of those other intent, you know, really targeted transition services, which should be community-based. So I think that's a balance. I'm not saying it's like impossible, but that is definitely something I think to consider. So I think ideally you would want the student to earn this at the end of their senior year so that they could go and really then focus on all of those community-based type of instruction, including employment in the community, and not have to worry so much about all the academic stuff, right? In post-high, that's
so, and I'm just seeing like a couple patterns. I'm seeing like, we think we're doing good. We understand what we're doing. Please help us know that we're doing the right thing. And then I have seen a couple people say like, we didn't even really know this was a thing. So, and that's, we try to get that information to you, and then some confusion about it. So that's why we're, you know, trying to update our technical assistance documents to make it more clear, but then having something like this for you all, and do our best to clarify as much as we can, because
yes,
again, sometimes it's gray.
Right. And some of you have asked, where will the slides be for this or possibly this document? We are a big fan of Padlets, if you haven't already noticed here at the State Board of Education. I don't have a specific Padlet for the alternate diploma, but I have one for kind of all things graduation related. So what I will do is I'll create sort of a section of that Padlet that is just specific to the alternate diploma. And then make sure that those slides for the communities of practice are on there. Any updated, other documents, we can put on that.
So
the
before we
recording
wrap
as
up,
well.
maybe you can put that Padlet.
Yes,
link
I
in
will
here.
do that. Yes. It's called right now the Indicator 1 Padlet because that's our graduation indicator. I may rename it to just kind of capture sort of all things graduation and the ways that student exits essentially. So yeah, and thank you for this, for this last question too. What are you hoping to get out of this community of practice? This is really going to inform, I think, where we go next time, right? Because we want you guys to drive this. What do we want to talk about next time? We can also very easily go into breakout rooms next time. So we could have folks that are just very new. We could have folks that are been implementing this for a while and kind of just want some ideas, or LEAs that can share things that are working. We can go different directions with that. But we have 5 minutes left, and I do want to make sure that you all have time to do the exit survey, and I think we have a couple of wrap-up slides.
Yes, and Jalissa wants to know when the next meeting is, so I don't know.
Okay, and that's also on the slides, so let me share that. Okay, we did that. So future topics. So be thinking of future topics. If there's something you feel like we haven't covered or you really want to talk about next time, you can throw those in the chat right now because I'll save the chat. You can also email those to us later on, or you can stick them on that same document, just title it future topics, however you want to communicate that to us. So here we go. The next community of practice is March 10th at 2:30 to 3:30. Yes, and the link is the same. So that should be easy to find. It's on that flyer as well. And we publish that flyer for all of our communities of practice in the speedometer. I also send it out to my transition coordinators list. So I think most of you that wear that transition coordinators or specialist hat are on my list. But if you're not and you want to be, or you want me to add someone else, please reach out to me because I like to keep my list current.
Yes, and this is open, so we're not cutting anybody off if you know other people that might want to join as well. And I put the follow-up survey link in the chat, but it's also here if you want to use the QR code. And Lavinia is going to put that Padlet before we wrap up.
Thank you for reminding me. I'm going to get that right now. Yeah, so if everyone would just take a few minutes, please, we want to get your feedback.
So just a heads up, Southern Utah is on spring break March 10th.
Oh, shoot. I know you guys were super early. I think everyone else's is really late, and we did look at the calendar. We will record it and I will put it on that Padlet, and I'm about to get you all the link right now. So give me 1 second. And I'll probably rename this because I called it just indicator 1, but it's more than that. It's all things graduation. So, and I'll make it clear where the alternate diploma information is on this Padlet. So I'll put that in the chat right now.
And thank you for filling out that survey. Again, it just really helps us. It helps inform us like what we can do differently, what's working. It also is good for us to know who attended, and really is good guidance for us for moving forward.
Just so you're aware, there is already a column here for the alternate diploma. So here's the frequently asked questions. Here's the TA document. This is the document that really helps teams determine who is a student with a significant cognitive disability. We're going to be updating that too. Yeah. And what I'll probably do is put the recording here and the slides as well. So kind of keep it all in one spot. So
that's great.
All right. And you put the link in the chat already for the evaluation. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Well, if there aren't any last minute questions, as soon as you're done with that survey, you're welcome to log off. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Please let us know in the meantime if you have thoughts or questions, and we'll do our best.